Welcome to How to Become a Production SQL Database Administrator. My name is Raphael. So we've been backing up system databases, we've been backing up user-defined databases, and we're making sure that the backup sets are valid and everything is coming up as valid. Then we're restoring the databases on a local server. We've been restoring them on a remote server, and everything is restorable, so everything looks fine. But the question is, are we fine? And the answer is not yet. What we need to make sure is that the databases that we're backing up has integrity, both in the logical and the physical integrity of the objects in a specified database. This is where DBCC CheckDB command comes in. The primary purpose is to check both the physical and the logical integrity of all the objects in the database specified. So when you run this command, DBCC CheckDB against a specific database, or you run it as a maintenance job against all databases, one thing to understand is that it checks all the specified objects in the specified database or databases. As such, this can consume a tremendous amount of resources. So it's extremely advisable that in a busy or large production database, it may be necessary to run a few selected options that the DBCC CheckDB provides, and I'll be going over that in a second. So if you find yourself in an environment where you have large databases, then it's not prudent to run a maintenance plan on checked databases and all databases. You're going to have to specify a job for DBCC for an individual database and then scatter it over the hours or over the days in a week, depending on, again, on the size of the database. So now in this course, in this session, I'm going to show you what the DBCC is and set up a job and some of the options you can choose. The syntax for complete syntax for DBCC is as follows, and you can certainly look at that specifically. Now, I'm going to be looking at some of the options and giving you examples here. So actually, I'm going to move on to my SQL and continue there. So now if you look at here, the DBCC CheckDB command followed by the database in question. So if you were to run this, in very large databases or VLDB, this may not be an option as it's resource intense. So you may have to do some of these. But let's run it anyway. You should certainly run the DBCC CheckDB against your production database on your production environment at least once, because we want to make sure that the data we're getting is valid and it has integrity and there's no consistency errors. So let's run this DBCC CheckDB followed by the database name. Now obviously in our case it's only going to take, as I said, 8 or 10 seconds, 6 seconds. And as we've illustrated before, what we're trying to look for is to make sure that the DBCC found no allocation errors and no consistency errors. And if you did find any of the errors, then you're going to have to do fix these. And I'm going to be showing you how to do the advanced CheckDB repair in the next course, SQL Administration Part 2. This is a little advanced session. So you should do this at least to get the base metric. Now, obviously, when you do this against a production, you should be conscious of the time it takes, because that's the whole point, whether you can do them scattered or all at once. So that's the important thing. Now, obviously, you have the option of saying DBCC check the AdventureWorks data works 12/2012 with no indexing. So specifies that non-clustered indexes for non-system tables will not be checked. So this option is a slightly little faster. But again, it's not recommended on a production environment. I will certainly do this once to make sure we're getting valid data, and then maybe set these after the fact. If you're looking at another very busy one, you can run this DBCC check with no info message. Provides no data, as if you will, if this results it, I should say, except to indicate that it's successful. So if I run this against the database, you'll see it just says successful. And you'll notice the time approximately takes the same time. So it is suppressing some information, but it will probably take the same amount of time. If you wanted to, now obviously I'm running this on AdventureWorks database 2012. If you wanted to migrate this to a temp database where you could, then you would have to estimate how long it's going to, what is the capacity it takes to do a DBCC check database on a temp database, and this will give you the estimation. So if you run this, obviously again it's very little. Here it is. It'll tell you how much space you need in your temp database if you were to direct the CheckDB to the temp database rather than doing it on the database itself. So this is another important view you can do it. You can also check the physical disk, if you will. This omits the logical checks. Again, you may want to do these periodically, but again, let me highlight this and execute. And obviously this will be a little bit because now it's running against the physical disk, so it is a little faster. But again, it's omitting the internal logic checks. So again, I would not recommend this on a production environment. But again, this is the one you should do. If you find that you have very large databases, make sure you have set up jobs and scatter over the days of the week or hours of the day. And so this is the important ones, and see this. These are some of the options. You're going to have to play around with these to determine which is the best for your needs. Now, obviously, the other thing is that we don't want to be doing this manually. We want to be doing this on a job. So we're going to create a job. Now, if I go here and expand the job, I've already created a job called DBCC CheckDB AdventureWorks. And if I double click, I'll get the job. So I've looked at the steps, and if I go edit, this is the command, obviously. And I'm going to go OK. What I've done here is I've gone to advance, and I've checked the output file. So I want the output file to be to this directory, and you can do that so we can see the data after its execution. Now this is overwritten, so just make a note of that. Now go general and OK. Obviously you can schedule it for what you want, but I've scheduled it for every 15 seconds for demonstration purposes. And obviously you can set up notifications as I have already. So now I'm going to run this and view it here. So let's see if it runs, and we can see the output file of the DBCC. So let me bring that over here so we can see it. And now as soon as I execute the job, you'll see that the output file is being loaded here. There it goes. And we can view the data, and obviously remember we're looking for the last line, which indicates that there are no allocation errors, 0, and no consistency errors, 0. So this has integrity, so that's great. The other thing I want to note is that obviously, I'm running this day. If you wanted to create many jobs and you had many databases there, then we can certainly go through the GUI process. But as you probably know by now, it's more important to, more faster and more prudent to do it through scripts. So what I would suggest is create a database and set up the parameters. If they're somewhat similar, right-click, script job as, create, new window. Now this will take all the parameters for creating that job. And then obviously if you wanted to create this for another database, then you would go here in line by line and change the necessary options. Like obviously you would change the database here to whichever database you're referring to. And a few other things. Obviously use database, you would change that to the database, and so on. So just go through this whole process and changing it. Now I'm going to delete this just to illustrate to you that that script will actually create the entire database. So you can save this, and now if I execute this, it's successful. If I go to jobs, refresh, you'll see the jobs is being created again. So now I can get rid of this, and I can start scheduling the jobs. And obviously it'll just take a few seconds, and then this is a great way to keep a data validating that it has integrity. So this is a very important step that you must do on production databases. You must make sure that the backups that you are doing are not only valid and restorable, but the data within it has integrity, both in the physical aspect and in the logical. And this is the tool that uses it. So I will leave it there, and we'll pick up in the next video. So my name is Raphael, and this is how to become a production SQL database administrator.